Welcome back to Skill Up Stand channel. In this session, I will discuss about what is the difference between Windows PowerShell and Microsoft PowerShell. I know the topic by itself is very interesting. The reason is some of you might have already got confused why there is a difference between Windows PowerShell and Microsoft PowerShell when both the product is coming from the same vendor, right? So Microsoft has been doing a lot of enhancements and feature releases in the past. And in my previous session, when we discussed about history of PowerShell and how to install PowerShell, I've already told there are two different generations of PowerShell. I would say starting from PowerShell version 1 to 5.1, it was brand named as Windows PowerShell. The reason for that is actually it was only available in Microsoft Windows. It was a proprietary tool which gets added as a pre-installed feature as part of your operating system. But then we had another version called PowerShell Core, which is version 6.x, 6.1, 2, and 3. And we are not going to distinguish, or we are not going to differentiate these two versions. The reason is PowerShell Core was not heavily successful, and it was not intended to be a replacement for Windows PowerShell. But then Microsoft has released a PowerShell version 7 that might be a probable replacement for version 5.1. So if you are going with any PowerShell scripting or automation or any configuration management activity, it is always a good practice to go and install PowerShell version 7, which is the latest version from Microsoft. And the major difference, it is not intended only to be running on Microsoft operating system. Instead, it is a kind of open source product. So PowerShell version 1 to 5.1, it's a closed source. So Microsoft has never shared the source code in any of the online repository. But then the PowerShell version 7, it's an open source product, and it's available in GitHub repository where you can go and download it, and you can customize it based on your requirement. And this one can be installed in Windows, it can be installed in Mac, it can be installed in Linux, Unix, and your Raspberry Pi, and so on. So it's cross-platform, and definitely there is a new release called PowerShell version 7.3, which got recently released in this month, beginning of this month, and 7.3 is the latest version that we have. Okay, and let me quickly jump into the difference between these two products. Okay, so let me just go here. So as I told you, the versions are from okay, let's do this way. Okay, so this is the source code is not a openly available one, and then the OS platform, it's just Windows and stuff. Even we can just call this PowerShell Core. It's pretty much similar to PowerShell 7, but then there has been a lot of enhancements and so on. So when you go to, okay, so this is cross-platform, and this has got only Windows support. And on the back end, when you talk about how exactly this got developed, or what is the back end runtime environment, so this was developed based on .NET framework, which is the full blown version of .NET framework runtime. And here they have used the .NET Core runtime to prepare, or the framework behind is .NET Core instead of .NET framework. So I can show you how to open the program here in your operating system. So if you go to run, okay, so if you type pwsh, it opens up the latest Microsoft PowerShell. If you look at here, the version is 7.2.x. So this is the latest one. So in order to open up the latest version, so in order to open the PowerShell program, you have to use pwsh.exe, whereas the older one can be opened using PowerShell.exe. So you can either go to your run prompt and then type PowerShell.exe, or just PowerShell, it opens up the older version of PowerShell. So let's do one thing. Let's compare these two things side by side. Okay, let me try to have it here like this. Okay, so if you look at the main differences, so you can see okay, let's talk about the version here, PS version table, and then the version of it, the same command I'll execute here. Okay, you can see that there is a big difference here. So this is 7.2.6 and this one is 5.1, and the build has got a lot of differences, but that's fine. So you can see that it is 7.2.6 and this one is, you can also open up the PowerShell from your command prompt. Okay, not just the run prompt. You can also open it from there. And there is a lot of releases and revisions in the older version, or the traditional one, in fact. Okay, so this is the version details. And if you look at the edition also it differs. See, for example, if I want to look at the edition here, I'll just say PS edition. This is the desktop edition, the older one. And now this edition will be different. This is the core edition. Okay, so that's why we call it as PowerShell core or just the PowerShell here. So the edition is the desktop edition, which supports all the GUI related activities and GUI related things. So let me show you a quick difference, one more difference. So if you look at the older one, if I want to measure the count of commands, okay, what I can do, I can just say get command and then measure the number of command. So there are multiple ways of getting this. So there are 1948 commands in the older one, and the PowerShell Core 6, it had only very less command because it was just the command line version of it, and it doesn't support GUI related activities, so it had very less command. But then I think 7 is not very bad. I think it should be somewhere close to 1019. I mean, yeah. So there are multiple ways to get this output. I think we can also use a different command. You can also use measure, or you can also use count at the end. So after running the command, I'm just getting the count alone. Okay, 1830. So which means not bad. Okay, so there are only 150, 110 commands that are different. Difference is very less, 120 commands. Okay, so the number of commands has got reduced, but then so they have got all the primary important ones that are required. Okay, it's not a big thing. And even on the modules level, I think there is a big difference. Let me check the modules one second. Let me go and get the module, and then I'll just try list down only the list, and then I'll measure it. Okay, I can just run the same command here. It's 96 modules in the older one, and here in the latest one, 60 modules. See, there are 36 modules which has been removed in the latest PowerShell version 7. Okay, that's a huge difference, in fact. So this is 96, this is 60. Okay, so not the core important modules are still there. If you want to add any additional modules, definitely you can go and download it and get it installed. So if someone have the question of what is the way forward, whether I should still stick to version 5.1 or whether I should go with the version 7.2.6, definitely if you want to explore the latest features, functionalities, and so on, you should definitely go for the latest version. If there are situations where you have some dependency with the older modules or the older commandlets, which have some backward compatibility, you can also go and use the version 5, or else like you don't have to really use what you call the latest, the older one. Okay, see, there has been a lot of changes in the PowerShell commandlets. Don't get too much carried away with this comparison. But then, see, if you look at PowerShell version 1, it had very minimal commands, like I think 128 or 29 commands. And then in version 2, that's when there was a drastical difference. There has been 500 plus commands that were added. Okay, and in version 3, I guess it was just close to 1,000, and it has been increasing from so on. So 1,000, 1,300, and it was 1,500, and then now 1,830. Okay, so it has got increased over the period of time, and now you can see we are around 1,800. So it doesn't matter. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard about commandlets. So we call it as commandlets here. Commandlets are nothing but the compiled binaries. Okay, it's executable. Those are all compiled binary files. That's what we call it as in PowerShell. In command prompt, we call it as commands, but here we call it as commandlets actually. Okay, PowerShell commandlets are ubiquitous, and they form the tools through which you go and create the complex script. Okay, so here don't get too much carried away. So the commands have got increased to support more modules and more functions and more features. So that's the thing. But Microsoft has kept only the essential ones in the core, so that it gets a little lighter, and also um, you get all the core benefits. Okay, so now coming back to this one is the desktop edition, and this one is the core edition. And if you ask me, like, how about the future of the future of PowerShell? Okay, so PowerShell version 5.1, it will definitely continue to get all the bug fixes. It will definitely get all the security updates that are needed to fix any vulnerabilities or any critical issues. But then PowerShell version 7, that is the one which is going to stay for some time. Okay, so that is the one which you need to focus, and it will continue to be remaining in the industry for some time. So meaning all new feature updates, any new features, functionalities will only be released for version 7 and not for 5.1. 5.1 is since there, I think, last couple of years, but definitely it will any kind of bugs or any kind of security issues will definitely be fixed by Microsoft, but there is no new features that will be added to version 5.1. But here definitely bug fixes, any hot fixes, or any kind of security updates, everything will be released for the version 7 product. Okay, so 6 is a kind of different animal. Okay, so 7 is the one which you have to use, either 5.1 or 7. So the 6 version was kind of a little different, and it had very limited support, and it had a lot of bugs as well. Okay, so when you talk about installing the PowerShell 5, so PowerShell 5, the package, you don't have to really install it. It comes pre-installed in your operating system, but definitely you can go and uninstall it, or you can go and disable it. I'll quickly show you how to do that. So if you go to your add or remove programs, and it's a kind of feature. It's not a role, it's a feature. If you go to turn Windows on or off, if you go to the tools, or okay, let me just click next. If you go to the features console, if you scroll down, you can see there is a separate section for Windows PowerShell. Okay, you can go and uninstall this one, the version 5.1. And also one more thing, if you want to go and have a backward compatible engine like version 2, that is where we had the older Windows management framework, right? A lot of feature enhancements was made in 2.0. If you have some backward compatibility, you can definitely go and select the 2.0 engine. Even you can uninstall the ISE integrated scripting environment if you want to do any scripting, or if you want to have some web access through the DMZ zone, you can also go and get that installed and uninstall. So even though it is pre-built, you can definitely go and remove the feature. So remove the feature using add or remove programs is feasible. You have to go to add or remove programs, or remove option, and then just remove it. So again, even the Windows PowerShell 7 or Microsoft PowerShell 7, so it is part of your add or remove programs, but it's there directly here. You have to select this and then uninstall it. Okay, you can either go and directly select the apps and features and do it, or you can just right click here and then go to apps and features, and you get the same screen. And you can uninstall the PowerShell version 7 from the control panel programs and features directly. Okay, so it's definitely feasible. We have to install the required version as you want. It's open source. You can go and download it from the GitHub, and you can install it. See, most of the issues or most of the updates and stuffs are being notified to the end user directly, but then you have to be part of the GitHub forum for version 7 and PowerShell core. Okay, so this is the user voice forum. Every one who is the user of your operating system, they definitely get all the updates and support. Okay, so again, with PowerShell 7, even though you install the required version, you have different options to install it. You get MSI file, you get the zip file for your MacBook, you get for Mac OS, you get the package file, and so on. For Windows, you can either use the MSI file or the zip file, Microsoft installer or the zip file. And for Linux, you get the appropriate uh, extension or appropriate package for your Linux distribution. I think in the second session, we talked about how to install PowerShell on Linux, and I showed you how to do it on Red Hat Linux. Okay, it's there. You can also download the RPM file, and you can install it. So one last thing, I don't want to go beyond 15 points. So the last point which we can mainly discuss is where exactly the PowerShell gets loaded. Okay, so if you look at the latest one, I'll just go and show you the environment. Okay, so environment and then PowerShell modules, where exactly it is loaded. Okay, it's jumbled. Okay, let me do one thing. I'll split it. I'll split it by the semicolon separator. Okay, you can see the latest one. It gets preloaded into C program files PowerShell, and you have all the modules here, and then you have the older modules also listed here. Even if you go and run the same command, I don't think you need the quote, or you don't need the brackets there. Okay, it should work without the bracket, if I'm not wrong. Let me try. Okay, what I'm doing is, if I run the command environment PowerShell path, okay, it will give me the command with semicolon separator, and it's like multi lines here, right? I want to just format it. That's the reason I use the split command to split the output by semicolon. See, if you are not clear with here, you can just go and type environment env, and it will open up. Sorry, not here, in your search. Just go and type env, and it will open up your environment variable, and you can just go and check where exactly the PowerShell path is set. Okay, if you look at here, you can just see the PowerShell distribution and where exactly the location of the PowerShell is. Okay, so let me just open up the PowerShell module path. Click it. This is the output that we are looking at. Okay, perfect. Okay, let me close this. And this is what I thought of sharing in this particular session on what is the difference between PowerShell and the Microsoft Windows PowerShell. So Windows PowerShell is almost getting deprecated. It won't be available in the future, but the future is Microsoft PowerShell 7 and the latest releases. And PowerShell 7, one more thing, it is the PowerShell latest version 7.3. It was developed based on the latest .NET version 7. That's the latest one we have. Okay, so thank you for listening.